Welcome to Minerva Meets. I'm your host, Sonal Chandler, and this is episode 13. Well, here we are, a new year, 2025, and a new season. And I've got a great lineup of guests and topics that I'm so excited to share with you. So sit back and enjoy the ride. Today, we're going to talk about customer experience and the impact of AI on customer experience. I'm delighted to have Tom Cates on the show to dive into this topic. Tom is the founder and president of two companies, the Brookside Group, a consulting firm focused on helping B2B companies build excellent client relationships, and Encompass CX, a SaaS technology firm delivering leading edge AI tools to optimize customer experience. He is also a visiting professor of management at Eisenberg School of Business at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. With nearly 30 years of experience, Tom has led major initiatives in customer retention and loyalty across various industries. He holds 2 patents for his research on client loyalty, has contributed to 4 books and is working on a 5th. A seasoned speaker, Tom has conducted over 1,000 training sessions and has been featured in publications like the Wall Street Journal. Tom earned his MBA with the Wharton School and lives in Acton, Massachusetts. Welcome to the show, Tom. What a great background. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Sonal, and thanks for having me today. I'm really excited to talk about this. It's an exciting topic and an exciting time to be considering AI and experiences for our customers.
So, why don't we start by giving our audience an understanding, or at least if you could help us explain, if you could explain, what do we really mean by customer experience? Because I think that this is a term that's sort of thrown around. And I also think that people mix customer experience with user experience sometimes. And so, could you kind of break it down for us a little?
Sure. I mean, and I think you raised the right point. I mean, customer experience, CX, UX, we tend to throw these terms around interchangeably. So I'll give you my
Mhm.
definition of how I think about customer experience. To me, customer experience is the totality of a perception a customer has about doing business with you and your firm. It's created by all the experiences they have with you. Everything they do with you, you do to them. I mean, if you think about it, they might go to your website, they might download some information about you. You might make a sales call on them.
Mhm.
Maybe they ask you for a quote. Maybe they buy from you. Maybe you send them a bill. Maybe the bill's right. Maybe the bill's wrong. All of
Yeah.
these different experiences they're having with you starts to shape their perception of you. That in its totality is the customer experience. But at the same time, there's a big bad outside world out there. While
Mhm.
they're having all these interactions with you, they might be talking to one of your competitors. They might be reading about you in the press. Maybe they phone a friend and say, "Hey, what's it like to work with Tom?"
Right,
Well,
right.
that shapes their perception as well. And so that customer experience is this perception they have of everything they've done with you and your firm relative to their outside world. And they sit back at any point in time and say, "Hey, is this somebody I want to keep doing business with?"
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned perception because I think that it's it's fascinating at how perceptions are formed, right? And as an organization, if if you're not, mindful of that, you could go into the bad perception bucket very quickly. You just have to do one thing, right? One
Yeah.
thing, and the perception of your firm or your company is just demolished.
And unfortunately, you see this happen in a lot of large organizations. Going back to my example, maybe you as the sales team did everything right. You
Hmm.
tailored the solution, you gave them a great quote, you onboarded them, and then they get their first bill and it's inaccurate.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they think less of you and your company, and you sit there and go, "But that wasn't me, that was our billing department." To the
Yeah.
customer, they don't parse out the
Yeah.
sales department, the invoicing department. You are them, and they are
Yes.
looking at you. And so we take one little mistake, and all of a sudden it impacts the customer perception. Well, we've got to manage that.
Absolutely. And this is such a silly example, but I'll share it. I had an experience just like going out to dinner and say something is happening with the food. Perhaps it doesn't, get to your table on time or the order is wrong. And I've had, wait staff tell me, oh, well, the kitchen did it, or the person that was helping them, they blame that on
Yeah,
them. And I'm like, you've got to really own that. Like,
you got to own it.
you can't go off and blame others. Like, you're the face of whatever's coming out of that kitchen. I
Correct. I
think
mean,
it's
at
the
the end of
same
the
thing.
day, the you're the tip of the spear. You are the face of
Yes.
that organization,
Yes.
and they're not looking to go and sort it out with a kitchen staff, right?
Yeah.
They just go
Yeah.
away unhappy, and then they might tell a friend about their experience, and all of a sudden
Absolutely.
you're losing control of the experience because, in so many respects, you never have control of the experience. The customer owns what they think the experience is.
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
even, I mean, if you think about going back to that model, all you can control is all your little interactions. You can't control whether the customer wants to go and talk to a competitor. You can't control whether they want to compare you to someone else. All you can do
Mhm.
is hopefully manage all of your little touch points as best you can and hope you do them at a level that's well enough that it leaves them with a positive perception.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting about your comment about how the customer gets to define it is, they could have a bad day, and you could kind of be walking into that bad day, and that the fact that they are having a bad day could potentially impact you negatively because you could have done everything right,
Sure.
right? And so I don't know, what are your thoughts on some of this, like, how this perception that the customer gets to define, that experience?
As my dad used to tell me, fair is what you pay to ride the bus. The world isn't always fair, right? You're absolutely right. Sometimes you run into a customer who's having a bad day, and no matter how hard you work, they're still having a bad day.
Yeah.
At the same time, I believe there's kind of karma in the universe. You're going to run into a customer that's having a great day. And even though you screwed up, they're going to say, that's okay. Tom's
Yeah.
going to make it right. You can't let those sort of issues define you. Which, a lot of what my clients work on is how do we constantly measure that? Because what
Hmm.
you also realize is maybe that customer is having a bad day. You somehow exasperated that bad day they're having. And oftentimes they're not going to tell you.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting there thinking everything's fine. They've left having a bad experience, maybe telling a few friends, and all of a sudden, again, you've lost control of your experience. And so, without setting up ways to constantly monitor this, you're flying blind. Your strategies are wrong, all that kind of impact.
Yeah. And I think, the customer experience also has a lot to do with expectations. And, I'm hearing a lot, and I mean, we're seeing it, right? That we're building this culture of now and fast, and like, there's just no time to pause. And I think in our past, you've given us a conversation about like Amazon, right? How they're just like literally, there's these elves in the middle of the night that drop things at my door, and I open my door, and there it is, right?
Yeah,
So
it's
tell me a
crazy. I
little bit
mean,
about that. Yeah.
you're absolutely right. And I think this is a really important thing for people to take away. Experience is relative. What customers don't look to you and say, you're a 9 out of 10, therefore you're great.
Hmm.
What they look for you is, are you better, the same, or worse than I can get elsewhere?
Yeah.
And elsewhere is that big bad outside world I mentioned. It's your competitors. It's people outside of your industry.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Imagine you are a retailer today, to your point about Amazon. I'm sitting here today, I'm up in my house in New Hampshire, staring out on a lake. I could probably order something today from Amazon and have it here by 2 o'clock this afternoon. Amazon has raised my expectations of how quickly I can get stuff.
Yeah.
Every other retailer now has to deal with that because when I go anywhere else and I find out they're 3 day shipping or they're, 5 to 7 days, I feel worse about that other retailer because I know it can be done same day.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's amazing what they've done, right?
Oh,
To raise that bar. part of me almost feels guilty sometimes too. And so there's that part of it because, this empathy, I'm just sort of thinking about the other side of like, oh my gosh, like all these people are probably running around trying to get this to me by like 2 o'clock today. And I mean, I don't have that thought all the time, but there are times where I've just been like, really needed it by 2 o'clock, right? But you're right. They have set the bar so high that
Right.
I just don't see how other organizations, other retailers can even compete with some of that.
And that's a great B2C example, but play this out in B2B world, right?
Yeah.
Um, Maybe you are a consultant and you think you're doing a great job of understanding your client and their business and what their needs are. But that same client tomorrow might go and meet with IBM or KPMG about
Hmm.
technology or about their accounting system, something completely outside your field. And maybe IBM demonstrates how well they understand that client's business and their
Yeah.
industry at a level that's even higher than yours.
Yeah.
And you could say it's not fair to compare me to them or compare me to KPMG, but the client can compare you to whoever they want you to compare you to.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
sometimes people completely outside our industry reset the bar for our clients of what they expect us to understand them, of what they expect professionalism, of what they expect competency. And
Yeah.
so it is really hard. It is very, very hard out there.
I mean, I've seen this even with some of my clients where, I'm helping them evaluate a product, and there's one of the options is somebody that understands their industry, and the other is an option that doesn't necessarily understand the industry very well, but I know that their product offering is far superior than the other. And I'm just trying to convince the buyer that, this might be good because they know your industry, but let me tell you, like this other product is really where you want to be because in the long run, it's the better decision for you. And that doesn't always work.
No, it doesn't. And it comes down to what the client values, what they
Yeah.
ultimately expect. And part of it is our sales process. Part of it is how well we educate a customer. They can
Hmm.
only value something if they understand it. Uh,
Hmm.
if they don't know about an aspect of what we offer, then they can't give us any credit for it, obviously.
Hmm.
And so it's challenging. I often talk about when you think about a customer, think about value. I think
Hmm.
about a pie, and the value is created in that pie. And we're going to ask
Hmm.
for a slice of that pie because we want to get paid for the value we're creating. Well, if you think about the product itself, that's a very small pie. The product has specifications, it's got a price. Customers can kind of start to benchmark what's the product. But if we take that same product and we wrap it in a great brand, well, that adds some additional value. Picture that pie growing in circumference. And now
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
more pie, therefore the customer thinks they're getting more value. And we can take our slice of that and how much we charge them for it.
Yeah.
We can also start wrapping that great product and a great brand with a great experience. The sales
Yeah.
experience, the service experience, the people involved in the deal can add a lot of value to this process. Picture again that pie getting even bigger and bigger in the eyes of that customer. And frankly, the more pie they see, the more they're willing to pay for that pie, the more
Yeah.
slice they're willing to share with you for all that value you're creating. And so that's our opportunity for our customer experience is to not just focus on the product, the equity created by the product or the equity by the brand, but to actually add additional, what I often call sales equity through the way we interact with that customer, through the people involved in the deal, create additional value for that customer for which we'll get paid.
Absolutely. And I think that's sort of taking them on the road of showing that you're a trusted advisor, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, our lives are better when we have people in them that we trust.
Yeah.
I can call you up and say, hey, Sonal, you're an expert in this. Here's my
Hmm.
problem. Would you please solve it for me? I'm going to go over here and do the rest of my job. And I'm
Yeah.
going to be confident that you're going to solve my problem in a way I'd want it to be solved in a timely manner at a fair value for me. Our
Hmm.
lives are better when we have trusted advisors in various aspects of our lives. We don't need a
Yeah.
lot of them, but we need some of them.
Exactly. Yeah, no, let's talk about that. So let's dive into, what a trusted advisor is and, how do you get there?
Sure. This is an area that's been a professional interest of me for a long, long time.
Hmm.
It's part of what I've got my patents on and I research. When two people get together and have a professional business relationship, where one of them hands you their problem and says, please go solve this. What
Yeah.
is that relationship? How did it get created? How do we know it exists? In our mind, then let me tell you the definition we like to use. And the labels I'm going to use are not terribly important, but let me give you the basic ideas. To earn a position as the trusted advisor of your client, you've got to put certain perceptions in their brain. Two of these perceptions I like to call the basic satisfiers. We call them
Mm.
integrity and competency. That your buyer integrity has to believe you're reliable, dependable, going to do what you promise. Competency is your buyer has to believe you have the people and the products and the skills to do what you promised. You know,
Hmm.
I love my brother to death. I think he's great. He was a landscaper his entire life. I know he would try his best to solve me if I handed him a financial and analyst problem, but he's just not very competent in that area. And so he's never going to be my trusted financial advisor.
Right.
Maybe in landscaping, he could become my trusted landscaping advisor. So the basic satisfiers are that idea that I have to believe you're going to reliably do what you promised to do. But
Hmm.
quite frankly, as we talked before, the world's really competitive. There's a lot of really good providers out there.
Yeah.
And so being good at integrity and competency, doing a great job, it's not enough anymore. That's where we like to look at what we call the motivators, something that makes somebody want to do business with you. And
Yeah.
there are four concepts you got to put in your buyer's brain. Recognition, you got to get your buyer to believe you care about them and their business. Proactivity, you got to get your buyer to think you're looking out for their best interests. You're not going to let them encounter some negative surprise down the line. Savvy is a big one. Savvy is all about the buyer believes you understand them, their world, their goals, their business, how the world works in their environment. And then finally, chemistry is do they like working with you? Does your team click? Do you communicate well? And so, through all of those experiences we talked about, through that customer experience, somehow your customer has to believe you have integrity, competency, recognition, proactivity, savvy, and chemistry. And you have to have it a level higher, going back to your point about setting expectations. You have to create that at a different level than what they believe they can get elsewhere. If they think they can get the same integrity and competency from another provider, then they might as well buy the cheapest. You're a commodity.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not whether
When
you're good or bad, it's whether you're better or worse.
right, yeah, and being better is, it sounds like a hard concept, but sometimes, it's amazing what little things you can do to be
Oh,
better.
it's
Right.
crazy. I mean, and again, going back to that experience, right? They're going to sit back after all these interactions they've had with you and your firm relative to all the interactions they've had with the outside world. And
Hmm.
it could be the smallest little thing that tips you into, yeah, they're better because of this, or
Yeah.
you're worse
Yeah.
because of this.
Yeah. I mean, I liken that to, after going to a physician visit and granted this is a completely different industry, but the next day the doctor actually calls me and it's like, "How are you doing today?" We talked about X and I wanted to follow up and the fact that he took the time to pick up the phone and call me, right? And it wasn't his nurse, it wasn't somebody else, it was
He
the
didn't send you
doctor.
a text, he didn't send you an email, a
Exactly.
form
Yeah.
letter. And
Yeah.
so think about what he did. The interaction hopefully demonstrated his integrity and competency. He's a good doctor. But now all of a sudden, he's pushed those motivators of recognition. He cares about you and your business.
Yeah.
Proactivity, he's looking out for your best interest.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
savvy, maybe he knows you're home alone and might need a little bit of extra reassurance. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
that one little phone call all of a sudden pushes him over into that, yeah, this is a guy I want to do business with. This is my
Yeah.
trusted health advisor.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think we could probably have a whole episode around satisfiers and motivators. And so we might have to do that as a follow-up because I would love to dig into the motivators and sort of how to get there. But what I would like to dive into is this thing called AI, right? And
Yeah.
how it's really changing or I guess impacting the customer experience, right? We think everywhere I go now, there's a chatbot that pops up on every website, or trying to get to a human sometimes is difficult. And then I think that I've seen chatbots evolve where before I would ask questions and then I would just like just get me to a person, whereas now I was actually successfully able to rebook myself through a chatbot when I was at the airport in Chicago a couple weeks ago. And so I was like, I actually even said to my husband, let's see if this works.
Yeah.
It really worked. And, so tell me, what are your thoughts on, how AI is impacting the customer experience?
Yeah. It's a, yeah, first off, I'm with you. I'm knee deep into this. I'm down the rabbit hole. Um, you mentioned I teach out at UMass Amherst at the business school, and for the last couple of years, I've been requiring my students to use AI because I am of the belief it is going to change every aspect of our lives. If you think about the current state of the industry, we're kind of like toddlers bobbling around. We're figuring it out where we're going to use these things. But if you go back even just 2 years and how far we've come, and now fast forward that growth 2 years, 3 years, 5 years forward, it's going to permeate everything. Um, it's fascinating. I find them incredibly cool. The other thing that's fascinating is it's incredibly cheap. You know,
Yeah.
every one of us for $20 can have the pro version of ChatGPT on our desktop. Apple just announced it's going to be on all our iPhones. We are going to have AI permeating every aspect of our commerce. And so there's a couple of things. One, when everybody now has AI and chatbots and things like that, yes, our experiences are getting better, but at the same time, our experiences are getting the same because your airline's going to have a chatbot to rebook it. As soon as
Hmm.
they do, every other airline is going to have a chatbot to rebook it.
Yeah.
And so our ability to create that different client experience, that exceptional, that differentiated experience based on technology, I think is going to be very short lived because it will permeate everybody. Everybody will have it. Now, if
Hmm.
you don't have it, it's kind of like Amazon. If you're shipping in 7 days and I can get it in 2 days or one day from Amazon, they've raised the bar. If you're not keeping up, you're going to fall behind. And so I
Absolutely.
think that's what we're going to see first and foremost is different people will figure out ways to use AI in their channel, in their world, and everybody else will copy it very quickly.
Mhm.
And so it will be hard to create a differentiation, a positive differentiation through AI. You will be
Yeah.
have a negative differentiation if you don't keep up. Step
Yeah.
one.
When we were prepping for this podcast, you had sort of explained the bell curve of the chatbot, and we kind of talked about the need for human interaction. Did you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I thought that was really good.
I mean, let's go back a little bit to those three concentric circles of that pie: the product, the brand, and the sales equity, as I call it, the people involved in it.
Hmm.
Anytime a product advances, has some cool new feature, they'll get a short advantage on their product equity. Their product is better than the competition. But it is so hard in today's world to maintain that product differentiation. As I said, as soon as one airline puts a chatbot out there to rebook
Yeah.
it, yeah, within 6 months, everybody's going to have it.
Yeah.
So I believe in today's world, with the slight exceptions of, maybe pharmaceuticals where you can get a patent on your chemical compound, right? Unless you're going to be able to lock out your competition from replicating your product, it becomes very hard to maintain a differentiation on the products. Products will keep getting better, that product equity will keep getting there, but everybody will have the same thing. And so your ability to charge a little more because you've got some cool chatbot is going to be very short lived.
Mhm.
Likewise, brands are very expensive to build, to maintain. And
Yeah.
as soon as one brand has a certain differentiation, yeah, everybody's going to have the same. There are just too many good brands on the planet. So your ability to differentiate that, which leaves us with that sales equity.
Yeah.
I can have better people than you do.
Right.
And so I
Right.
can train my people. I can hire better. I can build processes in my customer experience. And here's where I think the rub comes in. We're looking at so many opportunities to use AI to take people out of the process, where I think we ought to be using AI to put smarter people into the process.
Interesting. Elaborate a little bit more.
Sure. As I said, yes, chatbots are going to be great for rebooking my flight, but particularly
Yeah.
in B2B, how can I make the people you interact with better, faster, smarter? Right?
Yeah.
How can I use AI tools to make my sales team, my service team, uh, better understand you, better understand your needs? There is so much data about you available today.
Yeah.
How can I pull that all together? Move from kind of, well, Sonal's a whatever segment in our world, and I'm going to treat her like everybody else in that segment, to how can I use it to really understand what's unique about you, what's exactly what you need, and then provide that information to the sales team so they can tailor it, they can sell it, they can help you understand the benefit of it. So rather than take somebody out of the system and have you deal with a
Mhm.
better IVR called a chatbot
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
how about we arm that salesperson to say, hey, Sonal, I noticed you bought this, this, and this. I understand you're trying to achieve this. How about we do this and tailor it and provide that information like a AI virtual assistant to my sales team?
Mhm.
How do we make them smarter?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great because really what you're saying is leveraging the technology to enable your sales team to be better salespeople, right? And so not necessarily eliminating them out of the entire process, but teaching them how to be more strategic with the tool.
Exactly, right? How do I get a salesperson to be really savvy about a buyer? How do I get a
Yeah.
salesperson to understand their industry as well or better than the client does? Right? We talked
Yeah.
about some of your examples where you're trying to consult to somebody. How can I arm that salesperson, enable that salesperson to really understand and be a good advisor? That means they have
Yeah.
to understand the buyer, they have to understand the buyer's goals, they have to understand the buyer's competitors, they have to understand the buyer's industry, they have to understand your product. That's really hard as the world keeps getting more and more complex.
Yeah.
But we can use AI tools to enable that. We can use AI tools to help that person become an expert. We can make,
Absolutely.
we did some analysis. If you think about, let's say you're a medium sized company, you've got 100 salespeople, account team members out there. If you stood back and said, what percent today are actually going to become the trusted advisor to your clients? And
Mhm.
how many are going to be just fine? And how many, frankly, you're going to move on from in the next couple of years because they couldn't cut it, they weren't the right fit, etc. There's a lot of our teams, we did some analysis that maybe only 10, 20% of your people
Yeah.
actually become that trusted advisor. Another 30, 40, 50% are going to be fine salespeople, account managers, but probably 10, 20, 30% are not going to make it. That's a huge expense to you, both in the hiring, training, let
Oh,
alone
yeah.
how much business you've lost over these 3 years
Yes.
because those people didn't become the trusted advisor of their clients.
Yeah.
Suppose I can change that curve, what I call the time to trusted advisor. Suppose I could take you from 20% trusted advisors to 50% of your sales team becoming trusted advisors.
Yeah.
The economics we see when you become that trusted advisor, double the client retention, 3.5 times the share of spending, 14, 15% improvement in profitability, just by getting more of your people into a better position with their customers.
That's
There's where the
amazing.
leverage is in your business,
Oh,
let alone
yeah.
preventing people from failing it when you move them into that role.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this concept of trusted advisor, by the way, those were some amazing stats. So thank you for sharing those. Is this concept of an AI trusted advisor, something that's going to stick, or do you think that, no, people are really the trusted advisor?
You know, it's a great question. I think Amazon is my trusted retail advisor today, and I've never spoken with
Yeah.
anybody at Amazon. And so in a B2C world, there's probably opportunities for technology to play that role. I have a hard time imagining in a B2B world where a client is spending hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, that they're going to do it just by interacting with a bot. Maybe someday, but probably not in our lifetimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, this is not a bot, but simply having to check out on your own. People are grumpy about that, right?
Yes.
Where
Yeah.
then you see like the one checkout person, that line is like the longest. Meanwhile, there's all these like kiosks that you could go to and check out and no
And so
one's
let
on
me
it.
ask you, I think that's a great example. It is a retail example, but we've all experienced it. Is it that they've raised the bot experience, the self-checkout experience, or have they lowered the my help experience by only having one person there?
The latter.
Exactly. I've traveled in a lot of countries, and you go someplace and there's only two people at customs, and the line is enormous. I went to Singapore a number of years ago, and they must have had 50 people for customs. It was phenomenal. And it's not because I want to check myself out in customs, but I certainly don't want to wait in a long line. And so they made the personal experience so bad that I'm willing to go do this. And I get
Yeah,
it. They did it because it's costly. But this gets
right.
back to my earlier point. Why are humans so costly?
Right? Yeah,
Partly it's
absolutely.
because they are not enabled enough to be
Yeah.
value added, to be. So I think we often look at this as we think humans are very expensive, and they are,
Yeah.
but they're expensive because about the amount of value they create.
Yeah.
You go to some of the top consulting firms, the top doctors, whatever, right? Those people are very expensive, and
Hmm.
yet they create tremendous value for
Yeah.
their customers. So,
Yeah.
how do we create people who can create more value?
Yeah.
That's our enabled AI enabled trusted advisor.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way to think about it. And again, I would love to kind of just hear at a very high level, like, is it training? Is it process? Is it teachable? You know?
Yes, I think to some extent you're hitting on the right point. It is certainly training, it is certainly process, and it is also tools,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's take even the best account managers. Maybe this is a great account manager that you're paying a couple hundred grand to a year. To justify that kind of salary, they need to be driving a couple $1 million worth of revenue, or at least managing a
Yeah.
couple $1 million worth of revenue. So, how do you take somebody who at a couple hundred grand a year and make sure they can manage a couple $1 million worth of revenue for you?
Yeah.
Well, they need they need to spend time with that person, those buyers. So if you think about it, every moment they're not in front of a customer is probably a moment that is lost an opportunity to create value. And so every
Yeah.
time they're typing data into their CRM system, every time they're having to spend days and weeks researching an industry because they're trying to work with a client in that industry,
Yeah.
that's all knowledge that they need to have. And our current solution is, hey, go search the web and read some blogs and things like that. Those are great opportunities for AI. Hey,
Yeah.
AI, I've got a new client that I'm working with in the pharmaceutical industry. Build me a brief of what's happening in the pharmaceutical industry, current trends, stuff that I would have spent a week on. Now, all
Yeah.
of a sudden, it's created for me in 3 minutes. Oh, by
Right.
the way, turn that into an audio tool so I can listen to it on my drive to go meet with that client.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think though, like what I've found, because I actually do that, and I've done some research on different industries, and I've used the AI to help me just get a leg up, or at least do some initial research. And you have to validate a lot of that data
You
first of
do?
all. But I also think that that's sort of level zero. Right. And you
Yes.
can't like expect to take that and then walk into a client meeting without having any other knowledge of the industry because you could tell that that's textbook and that you've just read that, right?
Correct.
You've got to be able to add some current events to it, what's happening, the trends, some stats. And so I think just, I advise anyone listening that, yes, that is a great way to get started. But make sure that you add some things of your own personal touches to these things because, you want to add that personal value to it as
I
well.
100% agree. And I think you raise a great point that, again, it's certainly better than showing up completely unprepared about the industry. But go
Absolutely.
back to
Yes.
that relative, right? Your buyer's going to compare your knowledge of them and their industry and how they operate and who their competitors are to the outside world. And
True.
so you have to believe your competitors are trying to up their game. You have to believe other people are trying to up their game. And so it's not whether you read this and, ask ChatGPT, tell me the 10 trends in the pharmaceutical industry. Because I guarantee you, your competitor did that plus more. And so,
Yeah,
how do you keep
absolutely.
enhancing that?
Yeah. So in our last part of our segment here, I wanted to talk about Encompass because I know that you guys have this really cool virtual assistant and you've shown the tool to me and I love it. And I would love for you to just kind of talk about how you guys are embracing AI and how you're leveraging it in the tool today. So maybe tell us a little bit about Encompass and then we can go into the virtual assistant part of it.
Sure. So, again, getting back to our belief, this idea that there is so much value to be created by becoming the trusted advisor of your client.
Hmm.
As I said, stats, we've got huge profitability improvement, 10 to 15%, 3.5 times the share spending, double your client retention. So the question is, how do I become that trusted advisor? Now, when we go out and we talk to sales teams, 90+% of them say, well, I am the trusted advisor. And I go, well, guess what, guys? You can't all be above average. That's not how the math works. And so, first and foremost, our tool Encompass was designed to help wake people up a little bit. We go out and we measure whether or not your buyers, each individual buyer, considers their salesperson to be their trusted advisor. Oftentimes, our buyer, we think we're doing great with them, but they're actually consider someone else to be their trusted advisor. That other person is getting the phone calls that
Wow.
we don't even know exist. They're getting the question. And so first we have this tool that goes out there. It's built on some really cool research we did around how to measure those motivators, that recognition, that
Mhm.
proactivity, that savvy, those concepts. Have you done enough at a high enough level to put those concepts in the mind of your buyer? So the first thing we do is we measure it, all on a one-to-one basis.
Mhm.
Then the real secret sauce here is we have what we call a self-assessment. We take that measurement, deliver it to the desktop of the salesperson, and say, we've got some pretty good ideas of what your client thinks. Tell us what you think your client thinks. And as I mentioned, everybody thinks they're doing great with their client. In fact,
Yeah.
86% of the salespeople, when it comes down to looking at it, have significant blind spots in what they actually perceive about their client. They don't
Wow.
understand what their buyers are thinking. And sometimes it's because the buyers don't tell them. Sometimes we don't want to hear it. Sometimes we all want to think we're above average.
Hmm.
But now, if you think about it, inside the Encompass platform, we have what the client thinks and we have what the salesperson thinks, and we have those gaps. Now there's an opportunity to close those gaps. We have an opportunity to
Sure.
go and change that buyer's perception. And so we've been doing some really fun things with AI, where we've built what we call the CX AI Hub, where it analyzes each individual relationship between the buyer and the seller, finds where's the leverage, where's the opportunities, and begins coaching that seller. Says, hey, Tom, next time you're meeting with your buyer Sonal, why don't you talk about these things? And here's some information on it. Here's some tools. These are the things that Sonal's not getting and believes you're behind the eight ball, behind your competitors on.
Yeah.
and it really
Oh,
starts to tailor it. And it does everything from simple things like writing an agenda for your next meeting to a little bit more complex things like here's a 90-day action plan for you to work with Sonal to change her perception so that she begins to perceive you as the trusted advisor.
wow. And that's amazing, by the way. I mean, like if you don't have this tool, you really need to like contact Tom and let's get this going because I've seen some of these the data and I've seen some of the reports and it's actually it's amazing. But this goes back to your comment about or when our earlier discussion when we were talking about, enabling the salespeople to be more strategic, right? And
Yes.
how do you leverage AI to help you do that? And I mean, if I had, the agenda pulled out, if you could give me some just information on what my customer was thinking or what they thought. I mean, that's I'm going in with a leg up, right?
Yeah.
And so well, it's just it's amazing. But I do want to touch on another aspect of this, which is, you know, a salesperson potentially getting some type of complex when they're going in because they're like, oh gosh, I know what this person thinks about me, and then they just botch the entire call, right? So
Yeah.
how do you navigate some of that?
Right. I mean, one of the things we're very big on is making sure the frontline managers are prepared to coach. In fact, one of the
Okay.
great things the tool actually does for management is it provides those coaching points. If you think
Oh.
about it, and many of us have been sales managers in the past, even the best sales manager who might do some ride alongs, go talk to some clients, we're
Hmm.
trying to coach our sales teams, our service teams, our account teams. But the data we have to coach on is largely what our salesperson has told us about what the
Yes.
client is thinking, about how the meeting went. And so we get the feedback from the sales team or the account team. As I mentioned, 86% of those sales teams have significant blind spots in what they
Yeah.
understand about their client. So the
Yeah.
information we're getting to coach on is wrong. We
Hmm.
develop strategies based on that wrong information. The sales team goes out and keeps reinforcing that. It's why we miss our forecasts. It's why we lose business, et cetera. And
Hmm.
so, point number one is we try to work really hard to make sure that the managers are prepared to support their teams.
Hmm.
And then the second thing is that these are our customers. And what we find is, there are almost always enough trusted advisor relationships where we're doing really well to kind of offset the numbers where we're struggling a bit. And the salespeople kind of get, I see what I'm doing, and I start to perceive what I'm doing with that customer where they consider me to be the trusted advisor. How about if I start applying that to this customer?
Hmm.
Yes, there's sometimes bad news that our customer gives us some negative feedback. The fact is, the customer knows what they think. 5 minutes ago,
Absolutely.
we were the only one who didn't know what the customer thought.
Right.
Now we do know
Right.
what the customer thinks. Now we can take action. And
Yeah.
again, our customers want us to be better. They want us to be their strategic partner. That's why they're doing
Yeah.
business with us.
Yeah. Yeah. I recently did a podcast with somebody and my guest was talking about, solving pain,
Yeah,
right? And and this I think applies here, right? Is that clients are looking for challenges or issues to be solved and to be able to solve them without much involvement from them, right? And then if you can kind of predict those and provide solutions, you're already one step ahead.
that's that whole productivity dimension I mentioned combined
Yeah,
with savvy. If you really understand your client's business and what their goals are and what they're trying to accomplish, you should be able to go in and offer them ideas. Hey,
yeah,
Sonal, so if I understand it correctly, you're trying to do this, this, and this. Have you considered trying this out? Let
yeah.
me put together some ideas for you on this.
Hmm.
That's what we want as buyers, right? We want somebody to come in and give us good ideas. We
Yeah,
want somebody who we can then hand off our problem or our opportunity and
yeah,
say, thanks, Sonal, that sounds great. Why don't you go work on that? We
exactly.
want to buy. Customers
Yeah,
want to buy people who are going to solve their problems.
absolutely. And, someone that's going to keep them, one step ahead, right? And sort of have their best interest in mind. And I think that, educating, helping them solve problems. Those are some of the key traits I think that really add value.
And that's not what an AI bot is going to do for them at the end of the day. That's what a trusted advisor, that's who they're going to call, right? They're going to call a quote friend, someone who they believe understands them and their world and that industry, and say, hey, Sonal, I'm struggling to grow this aspect of my business. You got any great ideas? Wouldn't we all love
Yeah.
that phone call?
That would be great. Oh man. Well, listen, this has been so great. I have already identified some other topics that we're going to have to talk about,
That would be
especially
great.
as it relates to, AI and how it's changing or impacting this whole industry. But as usual, I'd like to always give our listeners some takeaways. And when you and I were prepping for this, you actually had some very good takeaways. So I'd love to, usually I do them, but I'd love to hand it over to you to, give us some takeaways. I like to sum them up into three. So if you can give us three takeaways, uh, nuggets of information for our listeners, I'd love that.
Sure, that would be great. I think number one, I'd just remind our listeners how we started this conversation that it's all relative at the end of the day. It's not whether you're good or bad. It's whether in the mind of each individual buyer, you're a better or worse alternative that they can get somewhere else. The world is just too competitive, right? They
Yeah,
can find solutions any way they want. And so the question is, are you in their mind the best option? And that's a combination of how they've interacted with us relative to the outside world who set the bar. You've got to figure out a way to design that experience to exceed their bar. And each individual buyer is going to have a different bar. So second thing is you've got to create this idea of a differentiated experience for them. And yes, you could try it by having a better product, but I think that's a short-lived opportunity because the world's going to copy your product as soon as you get it out there.
right.
And that's where all these chatbots, yes, everybody's going to have one sooner or later. So it's really hard. And if they see your product is the same as someone else, you're a commodity, they might as well buy the cheaper.
Right.
You could try to take that great product and wrap it in a great brand, create extra value, extra pie through your brand equity. But one, that's a really expensive proposition, particularly
Yeah,
if you're not the dominant firm in your industry. And two, there are a lot of great brands out there. KPMG, Price Waterhouse. Who's better?
right.
They're both great brands, which means they're both the same, which means I shouldn't pay extra for it. But you
Yeah,
can create a differentiated experience through what we call sales equity. You can grow that pie in the mind of the buyer through the way you and your teams interact with them. And that's your opportunity to become that trusted advisor. And to me, that's where you have an opportunity to create a differentiated experience, create some additional value. So step one, it's relative. Step two, create that differentiated experience, ideally through your people. And then three, you got to know where you're at with every client. I can almost
yeah,
guarantee every one of your listeners that whatever you're hearing from your sales and service team is wrong, which means your strategy is wrong, which means your coaching is wrong. Not because your people are wrong. Clients don't like to tell us when they're having a
yeah,
bad experience. They just go
yeah,
away. And so we're big, as you heard from our Encompass platform, we're big at measuring each individual experience. Don't treat your customers like an
hmm,
average. The world's too complex.
yeah,
Measure each one on a one-to-one basis. And now let's become that AI-enabled trusted advisor to go change each person's experience and each person's perception. That's where the growth comes from. That's where the value is. So
I love it. I love
relative,
it.
differentiate, measure.
I love it. Thank you so much, Tom, for being a guest on the show. I would love for you to tell our listeners, where they can find you, and we'll add all this information to the show notes. But do you have a website? Well, I know you have a website, but why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Certainly, you can find us on encompass-cx.com. You can certainly reach out to me at tom@encompass-cx.com, or feel free to contact folks like Sonal. We love working with partners like Sonal, and feel free to reach out through her, and she can get in touch with us as well. So any of those methods are great. We look forward to talking to your listeners and hope they have a great afternoon, evening, day, wherever they are in the world.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Tom. And I can definitely, like Tom said, please reach out to Minerva if you have, challenges when it comes to your sales team or even just growing or scaling. we could certainly help out. And you can always get in touch with Minerva at let's talk at minervaconsultinginc.com, or you can go to our website, which is minervaconsultinginc.com. And before we leave here, I'd love to ask our listeners to take 3 quick next steps. Number one, subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss a new episode. Leave a rating, and feel free to read those. So I would love to hear back. And Tom, I think we've come up with a couple of other sessions or episodes that we can have. So this is super exciting. Again, thank you again. I really appreciate it.
It was great being here, and best of luck to all your listeners.
Thank you.
Cheers.